And we're literally, I'm in construction, so like blueprints and CAD drawings or whatever else when you're building a building, where we're literally drawing on my leg where we're going to cut it off to have the best fit.
Thirsty Fighter here with episode 2 of my GritFit series, where I interview people that have gone through significant trauma and not only survive it, but thrive in spite of it. I was blessed to interview Shea. This is a man that 10 years ago went through a significant motorcycle accident and had so much trauma to his left leg that 6 months later he chose amputation. Listen to this interview and how he is able to hold fast to his fighter spirit inside and outside the cage.
Shea, I'm really excited that you're here.
Thank you.
We got this GritFit series that I'm super excited about, and when we talk about grit, we've got a ring behind us, and some cage. There's pretty much a lot of grit that goes on in the center of that.
For sure.
And I know you've experienced it directly, personally. But one of the things that I'd like to talk about is your 10-year anniversary.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about why I chose you for the GritFit series.
So last Wednesday was July the 8th of 2020, and that was the 10-year anniversary of my motorcycle accident, which in essence led to amputation of my left leg. So it's kind of cool to be able to reflect on what all we've been able to accomplish over the course of 10 years and the impact we've had on people, and just the ability to share a story and use it for good versus sadness and moving on with it. So yeah, so definitely.
Yeah. So when we were talking, one of the things that you mentioned to me, which really, really resonated with me and stuck with me, is that you refuse to have a victim mentality.
Yes.
And but when you're going through the trauma that you went through, because I want to back up a little bit. Like when the accident had happened, you didn't lose your leg during the accident.
Did not, no.
Okay. So that happened at a later date.
About 6 months later. So it's kind of crazy, and I know when we spoke last, I talk about faith, and that's been the foundation of everything in my life. And I always knew that. You talk about the victim mentality, and I take that back to faith, where a lot of people go through stuff and they wonder why me, or woe is me, or F you God, or whatever else it is. Well, for me, everything that's ever happened in my life has always been a stepping stone of what am I being taught, what's the positive to take out of it, and then how can you grow through that process. Never why me, woe is me, or that victim side of things. And that's been very instrumental in my success, not only as an athlete, but also professionally in business. And where I go with that is the ability to look at something and take the positive and then grow with that. And everything's been, like I said, is a stepping stone. So I'd broken the same leg playing baseball, which ended my career in that, when I thought that was going to be what I was going to do the rest of my life. And it was pretty successful in that sport. And then from that, had that rod that was inserted in my leg not been there, it would have immediately amputated my leg.
Wow.
So, and then probably would have bled out and passed away, is what I was told. So from that, again, everything happens for a reason. So I had the baseball accident, motorcycle wreck happens, the rod saves my life, have reconstruction surgery, go through rehab, and then mentally wrap my head around society and social norms and what is quote unquote a disability, and then done a bunch of research on prosthetics and prostheses, because I was never going to be back to the athlete I was prior or live a normal healthy lifestyle. So had a lot of counseling, a lot of prayer, and then had the ability to be introduced to a lot of cool people, and chose to have amputation about 6 months after the wreck.
Wow.
Which led to where we are today.
So you chose amputation. That was your choice. It wasn't something that you were told this medically has to happen. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, how do you come to that kind of decision, and how do you accept that? Was there a turning point in your life around that moment?
Yeah, so there was a lot of stuff led up to that, and just the essence of like going through the rehab and kind of seeing what I was going to be dealing with the rest of my life. But from an outsider looking in, had I not been in that situation and endured it, I would have said the same thing, like, wow, that's a monumental decision. But when you're in it and you feel it and you realize what that's going to be like the rest of your life, it's a pretty easy decision. So I was, my therapist, we were talking, and he kept begging me to give it a few more months or whatever else. And like you mentioned, a defining moment. It was Halloween night of that year, 2010. I'd stopped at a Walmart and was walking in to get some mixers for a Halloween party. And I saw a father walking out with his son. And he puts him on his shoulders and he walks into his car, and it just hits me as like, in the state you're in with this leg, naturally, you're never going to be able to do something like that. This is not what you're meant to be. So I went home and dropped stuff off at the party, went home, prayed about it. That was on a Saturday. Tuesday, I met with the doctors, and we were talking. And it was so funny because he comes in and Will's in front of me. He goes, I knew you were going to come to this decision. I just didn't expect you to come to that decision this quickly. So he goes, all right, well, here's some people you need to talk to. And it was just everything fell into place amazingly. So a company that he never refers people to for amputation, for prosthesis, he connects me to a company called ProCare. I go meet with the crew. We have conversation. They walk me through the process. Then we have a meeting with the doctors and them in their own office in the doctor's office. And we're literally, I'm in construction, so like blueprints and CAD drawings or whatever else when you're building a building, where we're literally drawing on my leg where we're going to cut it off to have the best fit, and have the ability. So it's a weird situation to sit there and look at and go through, but zero fear, zero anxiety, which is even crazier to think. That's kind of psychopathic to really think about that, but there was nothing to be nervous about because I knew that it was the next evolution of my story. And then, as I mentioned when we met prior, God blesses people with great callings, and it's up to us to embrace them and go with them or run from them. So I knew this is a great calling in my life, and here we are.
So you pray about all of your situations and things that you're going through to listen and find out what the purpose is in it. Like, how do you manage that?
So there's frustrations, and I'm definitely not a perfect Christian or anything like that. And I'm wired to be aggressive, so there are times where God and I have very candid conversations, but in the grand scheme of things, if you believe in the Word and you trust, you know that He tells you to trust in Him. You don't know the answer now, and always, there's three answers: it's yes, no, or not now. So you may not have the answer in front of you, but the trusting process and paying attention as you go grows you into that. Just like people have come into my life since this has happened. I mean, I think we're up to 12 people that have had amputations just based on my story and conversation and walked them through the process. Several others that have we walked through from not necessarily a limb loss scenario, but bodily injuries. That's where you and I came into contact with, where you've been hurt and kind of overcoming certain things, to have the mental fortitude to endure and go through, because it's not easy. And and again, it's never on me. And I'll use the analogy that I used to think that God never gives you anything that your shoulders aren't big enough to carry. And then when somebody told me, he said, no, God gives you more than you can handle, so you can trust in Him. And that's kind of the thing where it all comes into it. So it is very humbling on both sides of it.
Love that. Yes, and that is that when I had seen a post that you had made, you were balancing on an upside down Bosu, and you were challenging yourself to be able to it wasn't just balancing on it, it was lifting while you were balancing on it with weights. And I'm like, that's what I need. Like, I need that type of individual in my life, training wise. Like, we surround ourselves, like iron sharpens iron.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
So we surround ourselves with people that are going to help raise not only us up, but each other up, and surrounding ourselves with people that are like-minded. So for me, when I had my injury, I wasn't sure what my future looked like. But what I knew was that I had to just go forward.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, what is it? When you're going through hell, keep going. Don't stop there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Keep going through it. Keep processing it. And so it was like, having those individuals was really important.
And it's funny you say that because, indirectly, that's another thing. I'll go back to being a kid, and you don't really resonate or understand what it means to be kind of a role model, and I don't really want to use that term, but that's the best way to kind of connect everybody.
Sure.
So when you're a kid and you see a professional athlete cuss or do something or whatever it may be, that's your idol. That's who you look up to as a kid, right? So you look at that and think that's the way it should be. And my mom always said, even when I was in high school, when you have kids coming to watch you play ball, you have to carry yourself in a manner of which you would hope those kids carry themselves in the future. So when you say you saw a post of mine, it's the same thing. Like when we're busting our ass in the gym and doing our thing, you indirectly affect people. And that indirectly ability to do so is a great gift from God. So people are drawn to that, or people are turned off by that, or they're in the middle. So it's beautiful that when you share that story, I get a Facebook message from random people DMing saying, "Hey, saw you at so and so. That's so cool. Thank you. I needed an uplift," or whatever else. And like, again, you're blessed with a calling, and it's up to you to embrace it and move with it or don't. So.
Yeah. And you were talking too about this kind of fighter mentality and having that fighter inside. I've got this brand, Thirsty Fighter, and that pretty much, from one perspective, some people have said the nicest person that they've met. But once I step onto the mats in a competition setting, it's a different dynamic. There are things that you draw from that are naturally there, and God loves all people, including fighters. People in combat sports. For sure. But it's something that we turn on, and again, it's a sport. We are in agreement that we're stepping into that sport. Now, you competed for the first time with a prosthetic leg in the NFC. Is that correct? Like, there was a process there.
Well, my first fight was as an able-bodied competitor, and I really got into it just literally for fun. I say able-bodied, it's kind of funny to say that, but somebody with two legs. So I got into it for fun, and then also marketing for the company I was working for to entice clients to come see me fight, to get my name and a brand out there, kind of thing. Then I got hurt, went through the process of the amputation, as I mentioned prior, and then talked to O-Boss, who's the NFC promoter. I don't remember what it was called back prior to that, but I'd reached out to him in December. I said, "Hey man, I just got an amputation. I know this sounds weird, but I want to try to come back and compete. I know that's out of left field, but just if you can, I want to start painting the paving the road for that to happen." So from that, he got in touch with the board. I had the amputation December 7th, 2010. I got fit. My very first day of walking was January 13th of 2011. Then I went in front of the fight board January 21st of 2011. So, I guess 8 days after being fit for prostheses. And what's funny is, still to this day, I don't have a handicap sticker. And the meeting was down in the state capitol, so I parked in the parking deck, which was probably half a mile from the meeting room. So, and there's a process of getting fit for a leg to where it gets dialed in and doesn't hurt or whatever else. Your first 3 months are pretty miserable, getting fit for everything to get figured out, and you're new to it and whatever else. So it was excruciating walking from the parking deck to the meeting. So I took crutches and kind of crutched my way over there, and then put the crutches out in the hallway and walked in because I didn't want anybody to see me weak, right? So we got in front of the board, we had a conversation, and explained to them, "Hey, I don't know if I can do this, but I just don't want you to say no now. Just let me train, and if I can, we'll figure it out." So went through 3 months, started sending videos, and then Oblis kept going in front of the fight board, showing the videos and saying, "Hey, I think he might be able to." And then all of a sudden I started getting confidence saying, "Hey, I think I might be able to do this." So we're in July time frame, and I'm starting to bulk back up, feeling good. Things are working. Jeff Bedard was my coach, and Bedard, he's a straight shooter, so he's not going to tell you that, I'm going to put you in there if he felt like you'd be compromised. So in July, he and I had a conversation. I'm like, hey, what do you think? He's like, dude, I think you can do this. And he goes, I'm not telling you that to blow smoke, but I really think you can do this. So that gave me confidence, and then I started training with Diego Saraiva on some different type of jiu-jitsu ground game, because obviously he's an expert in the black belt, but he could teach me things that I didn't understand from a game part, to where now the leg becomes not a compromising situation or a compromising thing, but now use it as your advantage, and then be aware of things that you could potentially get in trouble with. So that was in July, and then I go in front of the fight board again, and they're like, all right, well, everybody seems like saying you can do it, but what about a fight-safe device? Because the virals are no foreign objects in a cage or in a ring.
Right.
So now that's a foreign object.
Wow.
So now we have to design a fight-safe leg, which had never been done before. So ProCare and myself and Dr. Traub get together, and we go through the process of designing this leg, and we're all good. So I'm thinking, all right, rock and rolling. Well, in August, fight board comes back and goes, well, you've met all the criteria, but we want somebody to test you out to make sure that you're able to compete, and it just so happened to be Andy Foster. Well, Andy was a 10-year vet in the UFC, much bigger than I was. I'd been training for literally total a year and a half maybe max. He mops me for 3 rounds, just absolutely kicks my butt. Well, then I'm disheveled. I go to the locker room and I'm changing. I'm like, whatever, and I walk out, and Jose Santiago is like, hey man, congratulations. And at this point I thought there was no chance there was going to be a fight. So he said, congratulations, they signed off on your license. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So it was just like this most crazy thing of like this massive accomplishment to get there. Now it's, all right, cool, we got to find somebody to fight. Well, obviously there's not a whole lot of people who are going to jump up to try to fight somebody with a prosthetic leg or arm or whatever. And I had 3 guys step up, and one of the 3 just happened to be ranked 3rd in my weight class and was undefeated going into that fight. And I was like, I want that guy. And they're like, what do you mean you want that guy? I was like, I want that guy to prove what we're doing. So September 23rd of 2011, guess what, 9 months, a little over 9 months after the amputation, gone through everything, stepped in the ring, beat the number 3 ranked guy in my weight class in 1:48. And here we are.
Go big or go home.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
That's that again, your determination, your drive.
It's fate. It's a God thing. It's not of me. And I mean, I wish I could take credit for that, but it's not. You just trust in the process, and here we are. So that win kind of catapulted a lot of stuff. Not necessarily in fighting, but just in life in general, and being able to be somebody that can benefit others in a positive manner.
I think the line you shared with me is, "In fear I trust."
Oh yeah. So where that comes from is regret, and I'm a big fan of public speaking and hearing other people's motivational talks and kind of where they come from and what that looks like. And that was something I undertook on my own to be like, all right, you got a story, but you got to figure out how to properly present that. So from that, some of the stuff I'd read was people that are super successful, like you mentioned, go big or go home, their biggest fears were regrets. And they said, like, I fear waking up 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road or 30 years down the road, looking back saying, I wish I had, or I wish. And I never, ever wanted to be that person where it's like, just because the world said you couldn't do this, you wish you'd have tried, and then now it's too late. So I say in fear I trust, meaning I don't fear failure, I fear regret. So I'd rather have tried and failed than to never tried at all and regretted down the road. So that's where that tagline comes from. And then, in fear I trust, IFIT, back to the victim side, it's always people look at it as if it were different, or if it had happened, or if it. Well, there's no such thing as if. It's you create your own destiny. Obviously, God's going to allow stuff to happen the way it should, but if you're living in fear, then you're not living.
I love it. The faith-based mentality of belief and trust.
For sure.
And being able to utilize that as your strength and as your guide, and that constant unwavering faith and belief. So you never walk away from that. You're just like, your roots go deep.
I just couldn't imagine
deep.
living life without faith, and just how taxing and trying that's got to be on a daily basis. Because when I wake up, things are not easy. Life is different. You work your butt off, and especially we're going through this whole COVID thing now, and you just figure things out. But if it weren't for faith, like, that's all on you. Like, if you think about it, you're taking that all on yourself, and that's got to be taxing and trying and wear you out. And that's not the mentality for me. It's like I just know it's gonna work out and be the way, as long as you're doing what you're supposed to do. So that makes life a lot easier.
It really does. I mean, when you talk about that, I think about the same dynamic when it comes to worry, and not just like the fear part, but this constant worry that when it creeps up and raises up inside of me, I feel like that is also being disrespectful to God, because if I'm worrying, I'm not trusting that He already has that path laid out for me.
Yeah, it's very true. But it's also, I mean, that's common, and we're not perfect. He's the only He was literally the only perfect person to walk this earth. So that's just a ploy of, a different power trying to pull you in a way and things. So I mean, I get that, and that's normal. And I would say that sometimes I catch myself fixated on something that you just know that you shouldn't be fixated on, and then you remind yourself, all right, man, like, this is not of you. Here it is. Like, give it up and pray about it and make it all happen. So, and I'm definitely a walking, living proof of that. So,
wow. And he taps us on the shoulder every once in a while. Tell that story about somebody that you met during the decision-making part of your life of cutting off the leg.
So, I mean, again, that's a Hollywood story. You can't even, honestly, you couldn't even script this. So, it was, like I said, I went and met the doctor on that Tuesday. That Friday, when I met with the doctor on Tuesday to do the amputation, I had a conversation. That Friday, the gentleman from the team from ProCare, myself, a guy named Jared Wallace, who is an Paralympic sprinter, was kind of one of the guys that mentored me through the process, and that's kind of why I love giving back as well. And he was very instrumental in that conversation and understanding, like, getting back to life and not just life, but athletically and competing at a high level. So that was the Friday after the Tuesday, and we're all sitting there, and again, we're blueprinting, cutting off the leg and where to cut it off. I leave and get on the road. I'm driving up 85. I used to live up in Hamilton Mill, and there's a little Mexican restaurant called Dos Copas that was off the exit I lived at, and going there and hang out. And like I mentioned before, like, guy code is very similar. You go to the bathroom, there's urinals. You don't stand right next to somebody at a urinal. Same thing at a bar. You don't sit right next to somebody if there's open seats. Well, this bar is huge, and there's literally one person at the bar. But my leg I was in such pain. My leg hurt so bad. I went to the first seat that I could find and sat down, and totally didn't even see the guy. Order a drink, and the bartender's name's Heather, and we're talking. Probably 30 minutes in, and guy looks at me, and he's just like, what's your problem? And never met the guy, older gentleman, and I'm like, what do you mean, what's my problem? He's like, what's a man like you that's got the world by the balls look so down in the dumps about? And I'm like, hey, it's just been a rough day. I'm just leaving the doctor and got some decisions to make, and we'll figure it out. So fast forward another 30 minutes, and he pops something else off, and I'm like, dude, like, what's this guy's problem? So I'm going to humble him. And I look at him and I was like, hey, man, like, just so you know, I chose to cut my leg off today. And in a couple of weeks, I'm going to go have my leg cut. And he looks at me and laughs. And
he laughs.
And I'm just like, oh, I'm like, what is it? And obviously, I'm getting so mad. So, and he looks at me and laughs, and then he knees me. And when he knees me, he's on my left side, and my leg that I'm cutting off is the left one. There's a metal brace that hits me. And he's like, so who's going to do your legs? And I'm like, what? He goes, who's going to do your legs? And I was like, ProCare. He goes, that's who does mine. The dude was an amputee. You can't script that. And his name's Bob Duda, and we literally sat there till like 2 or 3 in the morning, and just he was a wealth of information, wealth of knowledge, and he's been part of my life ever since. And then back to influence. He lost his leg when he was 19, and he grew up in that era where, like, you're disabled and you're viewed as kind of just different, disfigured. You're hardly accepted, and it was just the way life was back then. He had not wore shorts in public. He was 56 or so when I met him, so he had not wore shorts in public since he was 19. And the deal was, coming back to my fight, that I would give him a ticket to the fight. The only way I'd give him a ticket and he'd get in is if he wore shorts. And he wore shorts to the fight, and he's wore shorts ever since.
That's fantastic. If you were to leave the audience, leave the people that are listening to this wonderful story, what would you leave them with? Like, what can other people do when they are struggling, when they are in the valley with whatever it is, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual? What would you leave them with to help them through that window?
Wow, that's a tough question. It's kind of, you asked it, I'll answer it, but to get to the answer is, they say like the best athletes make the worst coaches because it just came so natural. Like in my world, that all has come so natural because of me growing up and the faith I've had and the trusting and understanding, God's plan. Or not understanding God's plan, but understanding that God has a plan. So for me, like that literally has been super simple. But I know that's not the case for most people. For those that are not as, I guess, entrenched or that strong believer of giving it up and understanding that somebody else is in control of things, and that, again, you do what you're supposed to do, he'll be taking care of you, is perspective. So in this year, 2020, has been really interesting in that word, perspective. So what seemingly is horrible in this scenario and in the time, when you put things in perspective of, okay, well, do I really have it that bad? So I'll use poverty for an example. Had lunch today with a gentleman of mine, or a good friend of mine that he's older than I am. I think he's gonna be 65 this year, and he's from Russia. So he moved here when he was 35. So it was post-war. He was telling me a story about his grandfather. His grandfather literally, it's back in the day when everything was going on over there, to where his grandfather got picked up and was deemed a German spy. Oof. So, and he wasn't. He was a bridge builder. So there was a lot of tattletailing going on back then, and I can't remember what the name he called for it was, but his grandfather's picked up as a German spy. At 3 a.m. in the morning, the whole family's at the precinct, and they come out and tell the wife, well, the deal was that he had to sign the letter saying he was a German spy and admit to it, or his family had to go to a concentration camp. So imagine you're in this position, your wife and children are going to get sent off to a concentration camp. When you sign this letter, it's immediate execution because you're saying that you're a traitor to the country. So he chose this to save his family. So when you think of perspective of, well, are you really in that bad of light, or is it really that bad, or is there something else over here that's like, I really have it good. Let's take the good from what we have right now and grow on it, versus the victim side of it we mentioned. So, in that conversation today, I'm just like, holy man! And for hearing him tell a story about his grandpa, and share that with me, and then kind of where we're going in the world today, it just validates a lot of stuff of, hey, well, it could always be worse, or where are you coming from, and how many people have sacrificed for you to get you where you're at, and are you grateful for it, or are you just a little crap head that takes things for granted? So that's what I would say to that, is just perspective.
Fantastic. I again appreciate you for giving these insights and giving people deeper understanding of what you've been through and how you deal with these dynamics in your life, and that we can all benefit from. I mean, that's what I want, is to be able to be a help to others when they're challenged, and everybody has different stories and different perspectives that are brought to the table, and people are in all different walks of life, and I think that this is going to be a really great story to tell. So.
Thank you for thinking my story's valuable and worthy of this. So, and then best of luck to you in making a big impact in other people's lives. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Did you catch that? In fear, I trust. Shea, so good. So good. having that lion mentality over victim mentality. Find your purpose and rise up and be a thirsty fighter.